to cortisone. And then DHEA turns into one of my favorite hormones and steroids, androstenedione. So I love the androstenedione from that DHEA converts into, because one of the really nifty things about it is using a DHEA cream in the vagina helps to regain some youth there. So, and it does that through the androgens. And then, the androstenedione can convert into testosterone and back and forth. And then this is what's important tonight, besides these other things. Testosterone can convert into DHT. So when this happens in men, there's a high risk of prostate cancer, and certainly male pattern baldness. When it happens in women, there's a big chance of hair loss and hair thinning. So it depends on, does testosterone stay as testosterone, make you strong like bull, or does it turn into DHT and cause your hair to fall out? Then we get into the estrogens. So all the way from cholesterol and pregnenolone to get down here into the estrogens. So my favorite estrogen is the estradiol, and then there's also the hormone called estrone. It seems like a lot of doctors have just never heard of estrone until recently. When I was, I've been with the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine since '92. They were formed in '89, so many, many years. And that's where most of the holistic oriented doctors and alternative doctors get their training, like your guy, Galtzer. And then, but only last year has anybody ever recognized estrone. And so now what I hear is that estrone is the estrogen of menopause. And I go, yes, but it shouldn't be. Because when we look at these words, we have the DI here, 2, we have the ONE there, 1, so there should be 2 of these to 1 of these. And what happens with tumors, cysts, and fibroids and cancer, what I see is that the estrone levels get really high. So what happens is you can be this estrogen woman. When I talk about estradiol, I like to talk about Dolly Parton, because we know Dolly Parton, but she's this kind person, and I bet she's just loaded with, good estradiol, but she's really sweet with it. And then in describing estrone, I talk about Madonna, like the Madonna we knew from years ago. I have no idea what she's like now, but we all kind of have an impression, even you, being a little younger, have an impression of Madonna. And so if we have 2 Dolly Partons to 1 Madonna, that's a good mix. But if it's reversed, then what we have is kind of hell on wheels and tumors, cysts, fibroids, and the likelihood of cancer. So it's really important in doing blood tests that you have your doctor order the estrone and look at that, so that if you're, and I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but it's just, I don't know if it's important to you, but it's important to me. And here's some notepads. You want to pass these around, some notepads and pens? There you go. Thank you. There you go. So for most of us in here, a good level on a blood test for estradiol would be maybe 60 or 80. And then if the estradiol is 60 and 80, then we divide, simple math, then the estrone should be 30 to 40. Oftentimes what I see when women are having hormonal issues and breast fibroids and breast cancer and so forth is the estrone level can be up in the 200 or 300s, and the estradiol level can be even like less than 30, where they quit counting. So those are the numbers that scare me, and that's why so many women come find me in my practice, because their doctors don't measure that. They don't know what to do with it when they do see it. So treatment, I want to throw some of that out there. So when I see high estrogen, what I recommend is one of my private label products called DIM and curcumin. And the DIM are the diendols from the cruciferous vegetables. And what they do is they act, remember that old game Pac-Man? So it acts like to munch those up. It acts like an antioxidant munching those free radicals up. Then, and I know that it works because on follow-up blood tests, I see those numbers come into balance. So that's really important. And then there's another test that I didn't write on here, but please write this down. It's called total estrogens. Total estrogens. So in cholesterol, when we have cholesterol, we have our total cholesterol, and then we have our HDL, our healthy, and our LDL, our lousy, and then VLDL, the very lousy density proteins, lipoproteins. So with the estrogens, the total estrogens, like I liken it to total cholesterol. And then the HDL, I liken to estradiol, the healthier estrogen. And then the LDL is like the estrone. And then we have these other estrogens that are not identified because there's like 58 different kinds of estrogen in the body. And we know primarily of these three right here, the estriol. So it's nice to get the total estrogens run, but they won't add up like cholesterol does. And then, so what happens here, a lot of doctors are prescribing what's called Triased with the 3 estrogens, E1, E2, and E3. And other times they're prescribing Biased, which just has estradiol and estriol. And they do it in a ratio that is consistent with a French study and some other studies that have been done, believing that estriol is protective to breast cancer, because when used and experimented in the lab in a petri dish, when estriol was used, the cancer cells didn't grow. But that was a few times compared to all of these women that we have. So if let's say that estriol, E3, the tri, so 1, 2, 3. So let's say that estriol in the Biased or whatever is a good hormone, let's say that, but it can convert back up here into estrone. So a lot of times when I see women taking Biased, I see these high estrone levels. And when I see high estrone levels, I see high inflammatory markers. So that's where I love hormones, and I talk about the benefits of those, and then there's the risks. So it's a matter of what these hormones do in your own body, if they're your natural hormones, and then what do they do if they're bioidentical hormones. Bioidentical is, or BHRT, is the name that's used to distinguish from Premarin and HRT. So the bioidentical means that the biologically identical to what your body makes. So if we had an overlay of the estrogen, the estradiol, estrone, and progesterone that your body makes, then the bioidentical hormones would be identical to that. Whereas Premarin and these other so-called bioidentical hormones that come in a tablet that you swallow are not bioidentical. They don't match that overlay. And so the issue becomes what happens when that's metabolized. And some women, I know they get by because otherwise we would have huge fatalities from those, but other women don't. So a lot of it has to do with stress, your cortisol levels, what happens there, the stress in your life, what you're going through. So you could be taking some estradiol and could be fine, but then have a very prolonged, undue, stressful situation, and now that good estrogen that you were taking becomes bad estrogen for you. So that's why I always, anytime any of my clients are taking hormones of any kind, I want them taking DIM and curcumin or something else called calcium diglucarate that helps to break down. Calcium diglucarate is in the category of what's called an aromatase inhibitor, which means it inhibits, it blocks, it prevents the good estrogen from turning bad. So it's sort of, I'll tell people, it's like if you're going to eat sugar, make sure you have some protein with it. Find the balance. Take some digestive enzyme. If you're eating fats, break it down in your body to its most infinite kind of substance and eliminate it. Any questions on this? Any thoughts? Any like, oh my gods?
So when I hear that cortisol is a substance, if you produce too much cortisol, it causes problems.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because of the relative amount of it that happens as a result of stress? I always hear of it as a stress hormone.
Yes, it is. So, and it's your body coming to the rescue. The body does everything it can to establish and maintain homeostasis. So like we're going into battle, we're going into war. And so the healthier we are going into an event, the healthier likelihood of coming through that event. So some people are weak to begin with. They don't have a lot of cortisol to make. And so for them, it's like what shoots up must come down in equal proportion. And then they've used it up. They've used up what you would think would be the rest of their lifetime kind of levels. So one way, a couple of really good products, supplements to help cortisol levels would be plant-based things. One is ashwagandha, and the other is rhodiola. And because both of those are good for hormones overall, they have a good hormone kind of connection. And then for my blood type O clients who like meat and are not offended to put animal in their body, I like adrenal cortex that comes from the animal. Blood type A's do tend to do better on the ashwagandha and rhodiola, but a little bit of adrenal from a cow sometimes really brings the balance and helps people be stronger. And when we're stronger mentally, we're typically stronger physically as well. Any other questions on this? Yes.
I have something. I now will be able to tell Dr. Gallitzer why I can't take that cow-based product.
Yes.
Because I have
Your
A-type blood, and
yeah.
he could never understand. I told him it makes me sick.
It would because your body
he's saying,
is...
that's ridiculous.
No.
But I don't think he knew, and I will tell him next week about this
Cool.
A-type blood, and he will learn something.
Good.
And I have
good.
one other question.
Yes.
Now. When you're saying that stress can turn good estrogen bad, so if you up, as you told me to do, my estrogen during this time of stress, how do I know it's not going to be turning bad and not going to be worse?
How do you know? Blood tests. But you can't get a blood test every week. That's not reasonable. So the best way to be able to get those estrogens and raise the level would be to take a reasonable amount of the dimethylcurcumin or some calcium diglucarate or something to break it down. I think of those almost like I think of a digestive enzyme. If you're, when we get to where we can't digest or process anymore, we need to be able to have some help breaking it down. So to me, and what I have seen from my 2 private labels on those products is, again, I measure everything. So measure the estrone, the estradiol, and then use the appropriate amount of calcium diglucarate or dimethylcurcumin. What I see happen in blood tests is I see the estradiol increase and the estrone decrease. That's impressive. Really impressive.